Welcome back, everybody. We're going to be talking about that little bad boy right there today. That is the DH3, the Daniel Horner 3-gun competition trigger right there. If you don't know who Daniel Horner is, look that individual up. He is one of the best, if not the best, multi-gun competitor going right now. And then, of course, Timney, if you don't know who they are, look them up as well. They make a ton of different stuff, from everything from bolt guns to setups like this Daniel Defense I've got right here. Now, after Timney blew my socks back with that Glock trigger setup, I went ahead and got a hold of them, and they were cool enough to send out this DH3, which I'm glad they did. Now, this thing is an adjustable 2-stage setup that goes from 1.5 to 3 pounds. So you can go pretty much as light as you want or up to 3 pounds, which is extremely light while staying extremely crisp on that break. And if you're one of those people that hasn't gotten into changing triggers on things yet, I completely understand that. There's nothing wrong with your mil-spec setup, but there is a reason that I threw this one into this specific Daniel Defense right here that you might recognize from my recent video. If you didn't watch that one, I will leave it linked down below, but it had literally the most atrocious mil-spec trigger from the factory that I have ever felt. So the first trigger I got in was going in this rifle. This trigger is horrible. And just to give you all that quick sneak peek, take a good solid look at that right there. That's your first stage. Super crisp right here. Check that out. And our reset. Right there. It is literally insanity how short this thing is. And like I said, adjustable again from 1.5 to 3 pounds. I bring my trusty trigger gauge in here. So I have this broke down because it's just a lot to have under here. Well, let's talk about this trigger and what it comes with. So you'll notice there it is nickel Teflon or nickel boron coated right there. The hammer, the sear surface, everything is coated in that on the inside right there. That's going to be a moving part or a part that touches the edge of another. The hammer is S7 tool steel, and then the sear disconnect surface is A2 tool steel. Up here on the top, you'll notice that hole right there. Now that is your adjustment for weight. I have this adjusted a little bit heavier because I kind of liked it above the 2 pound mark. That was just what worked for me because, like I said, it's a 2-stage design. Okay, so you're gonna have a little bit of take up even on fire. There is your first stage, and then you have a solid wall, and then it will break. We will do pulls here in just a second. You may have noticed that I don't have anti-walk pins in here. It does have 2 Allen set screws that are in there for you to adjust tension once you put your factory pins back in. They have not walked out. I have not had to readjust or retension. It has been just fine. When you first get this in there, it may or may not be set right for your specific setup from the factory. I did have to adjust it a little bit heavier because it caused a little bit of a reset issue when it was on the lightest setting. And I want to say it was actually under 1.5 pounds. So I adjusted it up to around 2, and I think that's where I am still at. I did do some micro adjustments just to really get it to a point where I liked it. So let's go ahead, now that we know, well, the rest of it, let's talk about the housing. So you can see it is anodized in that kind of copper orangish color right there. And then of course that housing, it's one solid drop-in unit, and that is 6061 machined aluminum. Good stuff right there. Let's go ahead and do some pulls. And I am going to pull from low on the trigger because if you think about it, let's think leverage, everybody. The lower you pull, the lower your finger is on this surface, the lighter the trigger pull is going to be. You're maximizing your leverage. Some people say, oh, you're pulling too low. No, I'm maximizing leverage. If you went through 5th grade science, you should know that. So let's go ahead and get where about I would put my finger and do some pulls here. 2 pounds and 4 ounces. So I want to say that this thing is going to be very consistent at that 2 pounds and 4 ounces as long as I get my trigger gauge in the same place and pull the same way each time. Okay, so again, right there, 2 pounds and 4 ounces. And I know some people may want to go lighter, but for me, that 2 pounds and 4 ounces was definitely a mark that I could live with. Okay, again, the consistency of that trigger is absolutely outstanding. So 2 pounds and 4 ounces, you can adjust it up to 3. I'm telling you, where I have this thing right now just seems to be an absolute sweet spot for me, especially coming from the factory trigger that came in this Daniel. If you didn't watch my video on this thing, it was the worst mil-spec trigger I've ever felt. I love Daniel Defense stuff, but that trigger was absolute booty. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the range performance on this stuff. Two-stage triggers in general, because two-stage hasn't always been my favorite, because generally I just want to have a single stage and then break through the wall depending on the weight. We'll go over all that stuff, and we're going to talk about price, because this bad boy, it ain't cheap. Now out there on the range, the performance of this thing is nothing short than exceptional. I've not always been a fan of two-stage trigger. I typically like single-stage triggers because I just want to be indexed on the trigger and go right through that break. This one honestly is so light that you don't really notice that first stage. You just kind of go right through it unless you are really paying attention and trying to do that nice, slow, and determined long shot. Say you are doing that 3-gun thing, or running this in a more precision fashion. Now you will definitely need to adjust this to your setup in there. So initially when I got this, it was adjusted way too light, and it wasn't actually holding reset. That was one thing I noticed, that I had to adjust it a tiny bit to bring that weight up so it would reset and actually run appropriately. Now that is not entirely uncommon when it comes to adjustable triggers, and that's something that you have to pay attention to as the end user. Because of course, we all know the first thing the package is gonna say, have it installed by a licensed armorer or a licensed gunsmith. And there's a reason for that, because they are shifting liability off to you or to the installer, because that is your responsibility as the end user to ensure that everything is set up right. Well, the quality of everything in there, that tool steel, as far as the coatings, everything is very nice. The housing was great. The machine work is exceptional, but let's talk about that price. This bad boy, I wanna say, is right around the $299 mark. I saw it a little bit cheaper, but I saw it right at the $299 mark as well. So that's the price we're gonna go with. That's a lot of money for a trigger. But quite honestly, it may have ruined me as far as some of my future build ideas go. Now, let's talk about who this is really for. If you are that 3-gun competitor person, this is absolutely one of the ones you're gonna wanna look at. If you're a normal Joe just looking for a little bit of an upgrade, this may not be the setup for you. Spending $300 on a trigger is a big chunk of money for somebody who's just looking for a little bit better something than, like, say, standard mil-spec, or maybe you want to stay in that $100, $250 range, because there are a lot of solid options in that price range as well, with Timney included. They do have single stage options that are far cheaper than this. This one is just their kind of premier hyped up competition setup. And then of course, anybody that just wants something that is like this aggressive, because this is a very aggressive trigger that does take some getting used to out there, especially the first couple times you come up and present on target. But ultimately that decision is always up to you, and of course the size of your bank account, depending on what you want to go with. That's what I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoyed learning about that DH3 trigger. I am definitely glad I got a chance to test it, so huge thank you to Timney for sending that out. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, turn the bell notification icons on, and of course, check those thumbs out in the thumbs up direction and give them a smash. If you guys have any questions or information on the Timney triggers, leave that down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. And a huge shout out to all of my Patreons. Hopefully the first live stream or two has gone down, so if you're interested in any of that, you can check that link out down below, or any of the other affiliate links that are down below, because that does help out the channel quite a bit. You guys get out there on the range, have some fun. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready, and I will see you guys on the next one.